What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are staying safe and you've been doing well since the last time I posted. Now, today's video is about the execution of Brad Sigmon, who was just executed earlier this month, March 2025. He was executed on March 7th. Now, before I get into talking about his execution, which was via firing squad, which is why his execution got as much publicity as it did, I think it's important to lay down the foundation of the tracks of why he put himself or how he got to the position where he was going to have to choose his own method of death in the first place. Because if he doesn't make those choices, he doesn't put himself in the position to have to, choose which manner the state's going to execute him in. So, flash back to 2001. He's dating a woman. They're living together. They had been together for about 3 years. She breaks up with him, and she moves back home with her parents, who are in their 60s. Now, the day before this crime happens, he's drinking booze, he's doing drugs, and he's sitting with a friend of his. He's saying, I'm going to break into their house, I'm going to tie her parents up, and I'm going to get her. Now, this friend was originally supposed to help him with this crime, but then this friend backed out. So the next day, following this alcohol and drug binge, he doesn't just break into the house and tie the parents up and kidnap her. That would be an awful enough crime. But that probably wouldn't have ended him up on death row, most likely. But he goes a step farther. He, armed with a baseball bat, breaks into their house, bludgeons these two people to death, these two innocent people who, probably just knew him as somewhat of a decent guy before he got controlling and was stalking her. When they met him, they probably thought he was a halfway decent guy. Then he proved to be this psycho who ultimately would bludgeon them to death. Now, they went out of their way, and every source that I saw on this crime stated that they were in different rooms. So he was going back and forth, repeatedly bludgeoning both of them. And then instead of just taking off and, fleeing off into the night and hoping to escape, he sits there and waits. He waits until his ex comes home and kidnaps her. Now, thankfully, she got away because he was planning on switching to a different car, but I don't know at what point she got away. I don't know if they hit a stoplight when he was headed toward the other car, but thankfully she gets away. And thankfully, he was only on the lam, for lack of a better term. He was only on the run, there we go, for about 11 days, and they caught him. And then the trial happens next year. And you guys know as well as I do that trials like this, the double murder trials and kidnapping trials, cases that have these serious level of charges, can sometimes take months or even years to adjudicate and to have to handle, because there's all this legal maneuvering happening. There's all prosecutions trying to get this delayed, or they're trying to get this piece of evidence, and you gotta have this hearing, all this sort of stuff. But this trial only happens over the span of 20 days. So 20 days later, they come back with a guilty verdict, and they give him 2 death penalties plus 30 years, which was a giant FU from the state of South Carolina where this crime takes place. Now, obviously, the next bit of this is the appellate process, because every death row, I know it varies from state to state and then state to federal. They get that automatic appellate process, and his first appeal gets denied in 2005. So from 2005 to 2021 is when all of his appeals, he's using them. He's appealing to the state, he's appealing to the federal government, all that stuff that you think about when you're thinking about the appellate process and how it works. He's dealing with that. Now, 2021 rolls around, and he's run out of appeals. Now, you would think that at this point they would give him a date, which they initially did. And then a week before his first scheduled execution, the state has to place a moratorium on the death penalty. Because you guys probably remember when there was a number of states over the past number of years that were having problems getting a hold of the chemicals that they used in the lethal injection procedure. Because pharmaceutical companies, whether they were American pharmaceutical companies or maybe they were buying the drugs internationally, were opposed to selling these drugs to these states because they knew that these drugs were being used for executions, and they didn't want to do that. But South Carolina is like, okay, we got to figure something else out, because they didn't want to commute these people's sentences to life. They wanted to execute these people. They're like, these people on death row, they need to be executed. We got to figure something out. So they decided to bring back, not lethal injection, they already had lethal injection. They decided to bring back the electric chair and firing squad, which is the method that Brad would ultimately choose here. So that starts a whole another legal maneuver by his defense team saying, hey, the electric chair is cruel and unusual punishment. We're entitled to make sure that he doesn't suffer. So that starts that lawsuit with Brad, his lawyers, and multiple other death row inmates. And the South Carolina Supreme Court essentially said these methods, the electric chair and firing squad, were brought back through the proper legal channels. These are legal. And on top of that, they told him, and I actually really like this, you are not entitled to basically a quick and painless death. I'm paraphrasing here. They basically told him, hey, you're on death row. You're not entitled to a quick and painless death here. And then they got it pushed back a little more, saying, hey, since we got these methods, you have to let him choose what method it is. So they're like, all right, we got these methods back. And in 2023, they were able to secure those drugs. So as of now, I don't believe that they had that problem with lethal injection anymore. So he had these 3 methods to choose from. And then they were able to get pushed back once more because they had like 5 or 6 people after they brought back these methods of execution and were able to secure the drugs for lethal injection that had run out of their appeals that had to be scheduled for executions. And his lawyers successfully argued, hey, let's come back to this after the Christmas break, so after this past Christmas, 2024 into 2025, because having to execute 5-6 people is, too much. It's going to weigh too much on everybody. Let's just reconvene on this after the Christmas break, which would have given him just that little bit more time to maybe get a pardon from the governor, maybe get a movement started to commute his sentence down to life without parole. So you're sitting here and you're dealing with all of this, and the South Carolina's like, all right, enough. He finally gets the date, and he has to choose between these methods of execution. Now, he ultimately ends up choosing firing squad because that's obviously, in my opinion, and we'll get to this in a second, the method that gives you the least amount of pain, comparatively speaking, to electrocution and lethal injection. But I'll get to that in a second. So he ends up choosing firing squad. So he's got these other methods to choose from. So his lawyers are arguing the whole time, this is barbaric, this is cruel and unusual. How could we do this to people? We're like a civilized country. The standard anti-death row argument you hear. And it falls on deaf ears. He doesn't get clemency. He doesn't get any of that. He gets executed via firing squad. So what is my thought on the execution method of firing squad? I don't have a problem with it. And like I just said before, out of those 3 methods, I would argue that firing squad is the least painful method of execution out of those 3. So if you're someone that is concerned about making sure that these death row inmates don't get hurt, they're not feeling pain before they get executed, they're just here and lights out, I would argue that there is seldom another method of ending someone's life better than bullets, because you don't have to be a gun expert to realize, okay, perfectly placed bullets are essentially lights out. And I'm not claiming to be a gun expert because I'm not. But when you have a target on your chest, you have multiple people shooting at it, it'll be an instantaneous lights out. So if you're concerned about death row inmates feeling some sort of level of excruciating pain here, I would argue that firing squad is the best method out of these 3, and probably the best method in general that would ever get approved in 2025 to execute people. Now, there are a few other methods that could bring forth that instantaneous death. There is guillotine, because obviously when your head chops off, you're done for. You're not coming back from there. And then there's hanging, because we know that when you tie the noose the right way, it'll instantaneously break that person's neck, and you'll obviously die once your neck breaks like that. But with the nooses, when you think of like Old West lynchings, sometimes you run the problem of, well, we didn't tie it the right way, and the person basically suffocated to death for the next however long it took them to suffocate, or we tied it so tight and so wrong the other way that the person's head popped off. So I think the easiest method, and the method that brings forth the least amount of pain, if you're someone that is concerned about that from the death row inmates, making sure they don't experience that pain, I would argue there is no better method than firing squad. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below on this method, on this execution. What do you think should be the preferred method of execution, both state and federally? Let me know in the comments also what other topics you want to see me cover, whether it's more executions, more sports content, whatever it is. Let me know in the comments what you want to see, and I just might do it. Not promising, but if I find it interesting and we can make some videos out of it, and you guys will be interested in that, we'll do it. Remember to like this video, comment on it, share it, all that jazz. Email it to your friends, hold the seance, and get all the ghosts and Captain Ahab to watch it. And until next time, guys, have fun and stay safe.